everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Midwife for Youth podcast. We are happy to have you here. Today, we are going to have a conversation on youth political leadership and engagement. We have fantastic guests lined up for you. But before that, my name is Warindi. I am your co-host for today, and I'm joined by Bertha Chulu, who will briefly say hello to all of you, and then we can introduce our guests. Bertha?
Thank you, Warindi. Hi, everyone. This is Betha again. Excited to have you and looking forward to the many insights we're going to share today.
Thank you so much, Bertha. And for our guests, as I mentioned earlier, we have very, very fantastic guests. We have Wanjiku Thiga and we have Shillah Salim. So even before they introduce themselves, I just wanted to share that Wanjiku and Shillah are young political aspirants in Kenya, and they are already doing political activism work in their own right. And so they will help us have this conversation on youth political engagement. And today we are going to lean on the Finance Bill 2024 in Kenya. We are going to draw lessons from that. As we start the conversation, I just wanted to provide some context to the Gen Z protests in Kenya in June and July of 2024. Their protests in Kenya were as a response to members of parliament not listening to the people who didn't want this particular finance bill passed, but they still passed it anyway. And some of the taxes that I can mention that were very punitive in the bill are an eco tax on sanitary towels and an introduction of value-added tax at 16% on bread, an introduction of a 25% tax on vegetable oil, and an introduction of a 20% tax on financial services transactions like M-Pesa. And so just to provide a timeline, on 18th and 25th of June, 18th was a largely peaceful protest, and 25th of June was, it became like a riot. I think because on that particular day, the members of parliament still passed this bill, even though there was a lot of public dissent against it. And so I think that prompted young people storming parliament. And then once young people stormed parliament, the government opened live rounds on young people who died, and many others were injured on the streets. So 39 total people died during the entire protest, and then 360 and over were injured, and then several others were abducted who we don't have like a specific number. And so after this whole thing, some of the successes from the protest were that even though Parliament passed the bill on 25th of June, on the 28th, the president declined to sign the bill into law. And also he reorganized his cabinet. So I think those are two of the wins. But also something else on the protest as we start the conversation anyway, is that, this was a protest that was organized by the people, and mobilization mostly happened on social media, on X, on TikTok and Instagram, were the main channels where mobilization was happening. So with that said, I think we can start. So I want to invite Wanjiku to introduce herself, because I feel like I won't do you justice if I do that. So Wanjiku, over to you. Tell us who you are, what you do, and what's one thing that you're really passionate about.
Thank you, Warindi. I'm so glad to be here. Hi, Bertha, and greetings to our listeners. My name is Wanjiku S. I wish Warindi give me a time to introduce myself. I'm a politician. I could take forever. But my name is Wanjiku S. I'm a dynamic leader with over 10 years of experience in gender communications, governance, and women political leadership across East Africa. I'm also a consultant and a panel moderator, and I've engaged on matters of youth in local and international platforms. I really am passionate about gender equality and social change, especially in the platform of leadership, and that's my space. I run a network of young women in politics. I strengthen their capacities to become great mobilizers, to run for office, and to participate in local and national leadership. Yeah, that's me. And you've asked me one question I haven't answered.
Yeah, what's one thing that you're really, really passionate about?
Yeah, I'm really passionate about representation in terms of leadership by young people. Yeah.
All right, thank you, Wanjiku. And just to share, Wanjiku and I have worked together for, I think, maybe a couple of months.
Yes, we did.
Yeah,
What
yeah,
an
yeah.
honor.
Right. Worked
Mhm.
together for a couple of months. Anyway, Shillah, over to you. Please let us know who you are, what you do, and what's the one thing that you're really, really passionate about.
I think I'm rethinking if I should get into politics after listening to Wanjiku's profile, and I think I'm in a good space where I can be mentored into it. But my name is Shillah Salim. I work for Youth for Sustainable Development, which is a community-based organization in Kilifi. I'm also privileged to serve as a cabinet secretary for health under the Kilifi Youth Assembly. So now you understand why I'm thinking of even going to politics. But
Yeah.
my passion will explain why I may want to get into politics. So I'm very passionate about issues to do with sexual reproductive health, gender equality, and most importantly, social accountability, which I believe will be a major focus for our discussion today. So glad to be here and looking forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila. So let's talk about the protests that happened in Kenya. So just especially, I think the day that I remember most from the protest is June 25th. June 25th, where the protests turned violent. But just to speak about the whole Gen Z movement, hashtag reject finance bill 2024, Ruto must go, Occupy Parliament, the whole movement around that. So just to check, what are your feelings or thoughts around those protests that happened this year? We can start with you, Anjiko.
Hey, so first of all, I'll tell Sheila not to be afraid to enter the waters of politics. It's really a great platform, and I'm here to hold your hand. Now, going back, taking our conversation back to the Gen Z protest, it was such a proud moment for me to see young people stand up and understand that the personal is political. We had done such amazing work in really raising the political consciousness of young people in this country. And you could see before that they were really ignorant and really did not have any interest to participate in politics. But once they saw how politics affects their personal lives, they took their stand nationally. And let me tell you, it challenged everything across the spectrum of age. And what it did, it gave people hope again that that the power belongs to us individuals as a citizens in Kenya. And you can see that young people now finally understand that there's politics in political parties, that the president can influence how a bill is voted in parliament, regardless of how you feel about it. But because you belong to his political party, he whips you to vote as how he wants. So young people now have a front row seat of what politics means. Nationally, I can feel what I felt is that there is now sort of a fatigue from young people, seeing that yes, we demonstrated. They feel like maybe it's not all their issues were captured by the president, but they saw that there are some bits of what they demanded were addressed. But you can see that 2027, young people are going to come out and vote. It is important that they have seen that they understand that they need a voter's card, and I'm hopeful that young people will register as many as possible for 27. So I know that young people are going to participate politically in 2027 politics, unlike 2022 where the voter apathy was really, really high, especially recorded by young people.
Yeah, Wanjiko, before I ask Sheila to also contribute, I just wanted to share. I'm one of those young people who are very apathetic towards politics and politicians.
Yeah.
I was like, I had this feeling that maybe our voice is not strong enough to be heard, kinda, and maybe our interests or our views maybe wouldn't even make it to the political scene anyway, is how I thought about politics. But one thing that these protests have shown me is that they've reignited a kind of hope that
Yes,
we can reclaim our country, we can fix the issues.
definitely.
And one of the things I like to see on the streets is we remember in the now rejected finance bill, there was a proposal to hike the price of pads, which are very
Yeah.
expensive now. Like even now they're very expensive. I just bought pads at like 118 bob, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
they used to be 50 bob like a couple of years ago. So the price has
Yes.
gone to double. So imagine what that
Mean.
added levy would have done to it have pushed the cost upwards. But now actually, after the protest, I'm actually even now feeling fatigued, as just you said, because
Yes.
yeah. It seems like it takes a lot to lobby the government, and maybe we'll get into this later, and maybe we can also speak about it now. Is maybe we need to have like a plan of after protest on actual lobbying on the ground to see
Yes.
how our issues like addressed.
Yes, Orendi, and that's where what my network is heading towards. It's creating a whole network of young women across the grassroots. It's mobilizing the voices of young women, because you see, during the Gen Z protest, it was very organic, and that's what I loved. It's young people from across the country. Nobody has mobilized them. It was just organic. People are tired and on the streets, but we didn't have this whole plan of what happens after a protest. But now you can see, we young people, especially those who are a bit head, we ask the late millennials, because we sort of, we have been capacitated or strengthened at leadership positions. We know how to really plan movements and have key results that we want to see. So that's where we've headed towards. It's mobilizing, having networks, having platforms that we are going to communicate and know exactly what do we want from step A to step B to step C. So I'm so sorry for the mental fatigue, but fighting for change is gradual. So I need young people. Yes, we can take rest, and it's okay to take rest, but let's not give up. Let's go back at it again.
Yeah, thank you, Wanjiku. Sheila, what are your thoughts around the protest?
So for me, the protest, like Wanjiku said, they have created some kind of awakeness, and you can even see it from the shift in terms of even as simple as the content that the young people are consuming. For example, during the protest period, you could see that everyone was doing civic education online, and so many people got to know a lot of things that got them agitated to now go to those protests. And I feel, yes, like Wanjiku said, that yes, we should not think that our efforts went to zero, but also just take this time to reflect, take stock of what we can do, because there are so many changes that have happened, including for us who are in the grassroots. We can see now the movement has shifted to even grassroots social accountability, which is one of the key issues that the young people were demanding during the protest. But again, also, there's also a sense of disillusionment as the protests we could see in terms of the violence. We could see also in terms of even I'll say the disruptors who are trying to divide the people in terms of who is for this camp, who is for that camp. So I feel the protests are a learning, I'll say a learning mark for us as young people. And also it has given us an opportunity in terms of even realizing the kind of power that we have as majority of the population composition that we are looking at in Kenya. And then also in terms of political space, most of the time, looking at our history and also just looking at our past experiences, young people were not actively involved in the political space. And I'm glad we have such movement like Wanjiku's, where they're empowering young women to take up leadership roles and also political aspirations from the grassroots also, that we can see that the people are more aware now of what it takes to be in the political space, and also they're able to demand. And when I say demand, this is when we talk about social accountability, that they are able now to it has kind of settles in people's mind in terms of what are the kind of the leaders we want. And I'm really looking forward to see those numbers go up in terms of voters registration as also the voting pattern come the next general election. That's my feeling.
Yeah, it's really so exciting to hear all these feminist perspectives from feminists, and in a time where we are having these protests, very unfortunate, but also a proud moment for me as an African to see my fellow feminists take up the mantle to, champion change. This is so exciting to hear. So, Wanjiku and Shillah, how, I don't know, Varindi, if you have another question, but I'm so curious to hear from them what it's like now to be a feminist, a youth advocate, right in this era when all this is going on. How does it make you feel? Has your life changed? Are you doing things differently? Yeah.
Definitely, programming is different. I will speak to how my energy was before. I had started feeling discouraged because I could see the reluctance of young people to not participate in the political era. But seeing young people coming back, coming into the political space, honestly has re-energized me. It has given a new purpose to my movement. And I've seen even to the National Assembly members who have always been progressive in their leadership, it has also rekindled their energy, their passion, and their commitment to progressive leadership in Kenya. Therefore, for me, I'm back to programming with a lot of vigor. I would say for people who lead youth movements in Kenya, for like me, of course, we were earmarked by security in Kenya. At county level, we have the county commissioners and so on and so forth. So we are on their radar. They are looking at how we are mobilizing young people, which direction are we mobilizing young people. They are checking if we are inciting young people. Therefore, it means also having a lot of applying a lot of protection, or being very extra sensitive on what I'm saying in platforms, because I know I'm being watched. But it's not something that is making me afraid. We have to move with courage. So in some ways it has changed how we are programming, but for me it has really put the momentum. It has really risen the momentum.
Wow, that's very interesting to note. Sheila, do you have any thoughts on that? What is it like to be a feminist, a youth advocate in this era right now?
So for me, like I said, is that I'm torn between two parts. One, I'm very happy with the kind of awareness that we have in terms of young people, and also seeing young say women and girls taking up leadership spaces. And also my fear is in terms of, like I had Wanjiku say that some of us were earmarked. So my worry is in terms of how safe I am, given that still some of the issues that we are seeing in terms of patriarchy are still very prominent, even in this protest, is in terms of, am I safe? Are the people who I am leading on the forefront or pushing to go on those front lines even safe, even after pushing them to go that to demand for accountability, and also just also seeing that how is my safety even assured, even as a person first, even before I go to the community? And given that the feminist also space is also currently evolving, so even looking at how we can see the emerging trends, how can we even come in terms of building capacity for young women to understand these emerging trends? So for me, it's basically torn between I am happy and also I fear for my security as a youth leader and also as a feminist.
Just to jump in, the safety issue, especially as advocates, is something that's really, really crucial and important to talk about. So I describe myself as a digital advocate for sexual reproductive health and rights, for feminism, for social justice, and we cannot fail to recognize that advocating online can be very tough and can be very unsafe as well. So to you both as advocates, have you had instances where you felt unsafe online, and what did you do about it? And what advice can you give young women like myself, or maybe adolescent girls, or any people who want to mobilize, to create movements, to drive movements for specific issues that they have?
So for me, first and foremost, I will give the advice that I was given by other female leaders who I work with. Was one, ensure that your online platforms are quite secured, and this can be as simple as setting up a two-step verification procedure, so that you know when your account, somebody is trying to either tamper with your account or so. And then also try and join a movement of other, I'll say, human rights defenders. I know during the protest, we were told to join. There are different avenues. You have Human Rights Defenders of Kenya Coalition. You also have Amnesty International. So even as you do your work, just make sure you also are part of another movement who can be able to come to you in case anything happens to you. And also, it is through this movement you're able to learn a thing or two. People are able to share their past experiences so that you're able to learn through them. Another thing is also be sure to also say safety starts with you first. So even when you are online, even in your online platform, make sure that even what you're posting does not jeopardize the kind of work that you do, including, for example, putting off your location so that you're a bit secured. And then also find someone who you can quickly reach out to in case something happens, so that they can be able to locate you where you are. But most importantly of all, don't be afraid to be fearless and pushing the boundaries. So go for it, because sometimes they say when you we say that fear sometimes can limit you into the terms, or in terms of the boundaries you can reach. So just make sure that you peg your online social platform towards that security procedures, and that you identify with the movement that can be able to help you out in case something comes up. And then there's also an issue of trolling, like we've seen recently with the kind of social media platforms you have. So just make sure that you're able also to have, sometimes social media can be quite overwhelming, and I think we can all agree to that. So also find time to decompress. Sometimes you just need to log out so that at least you can compose yourself into 1, 2, 3, and then come back. So that's my thought.
Thank you, Sheila. I definitely agree on also taking measures for your own safety, especially the two-factor authentication, and also turning off location. But I want to hear from you, Wanjiku. How has your experience been doing advocacy work on digital spaces, and what safety tips can you share?
Sheila has really, really well put it out there. And what I can just do is maybe just to strengthen what she has said and reiterate, especially as a feminist, when you are programming out here, you see a lot of people still don't understand what feminism is. So there's that war between both genders, because they don't really get what feminism is. So first of all, it's just really explaining to people what feminism is. And already the fact that you identify yourself as a feminist politician, you're already receiving hate. So what I do is that for me on digital spaces, sadly already I was hacked. I lost my Facebook page of over 13,000 following. Therefore, this shows that you are targeted. Absolutely. So I took measures like having with my new account, having a two-factor authentication, and also having friends within the security institutions in Kenya, especially in my county level and national level, because in case of anything and I need immediate assistance, I have allies that I can call for support and help. I also monitor those people who troll me, who are always harassing me on the online spaces. And you see, because I belong to a party, I'm able to use party structures or party officials to ask the people who troll, and they're pretty common faces to lay off. Therefore, it's important to have a nice structure, let me say a nice plan or a crisis plan, that should you go through harassment on online spaces, you are able to really take care of your backing. Yeah.
Yeah, these are quite emotional insights. I'm sorry to hear about how you were hacked, Wanjiku. Um,
Thank
a lot
you.
of things.
Thank you.
Right. A lot of things have changed, and now the globe is moving towards engaging more women. And something that also affects women's participation in these things is because they don't have equal access to sexual reproductive health and rights services, for example, or they don't have control of their reproductive health. You can get pregnant and then you can't be found in certain spaces or undertake certain risks. So I'm curious to know from you, Wanjiku and Sheila, how has been the access and uptake of sexual and reproductive health and rights for young people in Kenya right now amidst the protests? We can start with you, Sheila.
So for me, uh, I happen to we happened to have a program under our organization that is Youth for Sustainable Development, and the program is called Mekwe. And one of the models that we are using in terms of ensuring that young people have access to sexual reproductive health services, and I'll say services, information, and also education. And we are using a community scorecard. And why are we using a community scorecard? Is that we believe that through the community scorecard, we are able to, we are calling it the triple AQ, that is accessibility, affordability, availability, and also quality. So we use the intersectionalized community scorecard for the women and young people to ensure that they demand for better services at the health facility. And in this case, we are specific in terms of youth-friendly centers because these are safe spaces where young women and also young people are able to access services without bias. But what we are learning from the community scorecard through, because it involves a number of steps, where the last step is the part where we come to action planning, where we are able to bring the service providers on board and the service users, and they're able to just check in terms of where are they in terms of the services being rendered, what can they do better. So for us is just putting more effort in ensuring that our young men and also our young men, women, and particularly youth are able to understand and also demand for better health services in the county uh, and also at the national level. But what we are also can't be oblivious to is the health sector currently is already stretched enough. And for those of us who come to Kenya, for example, right now, like there's a shortage of contraceptives for young people. So you can imagine even during this protest, the young people are not only able to get to the facilities, but they are also not able to get commodities. So for us, we're using the community scorecard as a conversation starter to demand for better service delivery and also just enhancing social accountability for young women and also young people at not only the national level but also at the grassroots level. So those are some of the efforts that we are currently working with. Can we do better? Yes, there's still a lot that can be done, and this also includes getting even the political goodwill to invest more resources towards the health sector. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila. Before Wanjiko jumps in, I just wanted to share some more information about Mekwe and the resource that you mentioned, the Intersectional Community Scorecard. So I am part of the Mekwe program, and so is Bertha. We are youth panelists in the regional and global context of Mekwe. And what Mekwe does is to break down barriers to access to SRHR by applying an intersectional lens. And the Intersectional Community Scorecard tool and other tools can be found on the Mekwe website, which is www.make-way.org. So you can find those resources there. But yeah, over to you, Anjiko, on what your experience has been on SRHR.
I think the work Sheila is doing is very important. Running community scorecards, teaching young people about social accountability and following county, health budgets, and because that's where the money is. That's where the money is to really provide for young people. Like young people are able to access reproductive health care. In my county, Kiambu County, and let me go first of all at national level. when we talk about the health budget at the national level, in terms of reproductive health and matters like contraception, especially, we depend 99% on donor funding. This means that when donors withdrew the funding, then that leaves young Kenyans at risk really, because they are unable to really now access contraceptive. They are unable to make better decisions for their sexual lives. And currently the USA is going through an election, and that means when another president comes in, that means they come with their own, geopolitics and politics, especially for funding for, third world countries. And they might decide, to cut off the funding that is coming in, especially because Kenya, we depend on money from USAID. So in Kenya, contraception is really a risky sector because we don't program or we don't give bad health budgets towards it. Therefore, for young people, I see young people really being very curious, and you will find young people really going to look at the internet, what way can they have sexual healthy lives. And I warn young people that not every information you find online is correct. Therefore, it's always pointing young people to spaces, to platforms that provide genuine information that guide young people to matters on sexual reproductive health care. Also, I want to speak about what is on the ground. I went the other day to a local dispensary, and I was looking at what services they're offering, and if they're friendly to young people. And I realized that they are charging on matters like P3. And you see, P3 is a document that young people need to access so that they can be able to access further healthcare. And you find that a lot of young people go through sexual violence. And now in my county, they're charging a P3, which is a document that needs to be free. It's a service that needs to be free, and every young person is supposed to pay 1,000 bob. If you go through rape, that's sexual violence, you have to pay 1,000 bob. Where are young people accessing money? And today we know unemployment rate in Kenya is at 67%. It's at all-time high. Therefore, we are going through a crisis that young people, even if they're not able to access employment, then they are not able to access services around their reproductive health care. Therefore, for us young people, we need to vote better so that we can have policies that support the ecosystem within the reproductive health care.
Thank you, Wanjiku. Just before I ask for your final thoughts, I just wanted to chip in on that conversation around financing for development. It's an area that I really want to get into, where you've mentioned clearly that if you're running programs, for example, on issues like health that are donor funded, once that donor or the donor money ends, that's the end of that project. And we seriously need to think about how we can sustain these programs, even with the donor space shrinking. So I don't know if you have any thoughts around that. And it's actually a very, very real risk, because I think many countries that donate to third world countries are reducing their international development budgets. So it's really something that we need to really think about. I don't know what your thoughts are around that, Wanjiku.
Truly, we do need to stop our donor development, and money from donors never comes freely. It has a cost to it. And right now in Kenya, we are taking on so much loans. We are depending on donors. It is a time for Kenya to understand that we must be self-sufficient, because we can't always depend on donor funding. And you know why, Warindi? Donor funding in Kenya is going at an all-time low. It's because also Kenya was declared a middle income economy. I know I had talks
How are we
the other
declared
week.
a middle income economy and we are not a middle income economy?
Yeah, it was during this happened the era of
Yeah.
No, I'm
And
saying,
I
I know they did it, but why? Like, how? We're actually not middle income. We really are not.
It
but
is. Mhm.
but if you look closely, and I think Wanjiku, you're right, because, and I don't know, for those of us in the SRHR space, you remember this conversation started with now localizing funding, and we thought that it will not get here. And it even started with focus. The other work that we do is also in terms of budget advocacy, and it started with immunization. And I remember they were talking about the Gavi exit, where we were given up until a certain time where we will stop getting funding for immunization. And if you remember, also last year, there was a shortage in terms of the BCG immunization, which is the first immunization that a child gets when they are born. And I will say the only thing is that, like we said, in Kenya, we have very good policies, but in terms of implementation and also monitoring and evaluation, it's where we are failing. And one of the strategies that we are using under MECWE is by ensuring that young people are part of development of these policies. Because if you're not part of development of these policies, then you will not know the implications they have once they start implementing them. So just understanding that the donor funding is now shifting, and like Wanjiku said, we were named a developing country. So in a way, yeah, for lack of a better word in Kiswahili, we say walituchomea when they did that, because it brought a lot of shift in terms of funding, even where the funding was being directed to. Yeah.
Hey, thank you, Shillah. Thank you so much, Shillah. I want to give you a chance to share your final thoughts. So what advice would you give a young person in regards to advocacy work, protests, working in development spaces, working in social justice issues? So what would you advise a young person who wants to maybe join and they're afraid of being unsafe? Because we know we've seen the cost of protest. We've seen how many people were killed, how many young people were killed in the streets just because of peacefully protesting, and how many were injured and how many were abducted, which is very unfortunate, because the claim that we have here in Kenya is that the constitution is supreme, but state organs don't take that seriously. So there's also that fear that comes with doing advocacy work on the ground. So I don't know what kind of advice you could give for both of you. We can start with you, Wanjiku.
Thank you. I could say a lot really, but let's start with on matters, public participation, and what I am calling it public participation, because seeing young people going out there to protest was their way of public participation in the running of this country. So what I will first of all advise young people is to know your rights, know that it is your constitutional right to assemble for peaceful protest. It is your right for speech, and you must understand that being organized is so important. I know there was a meaning to be partyless, to be leaderless, but also it sort of worked to our disadvantage, because at the end of the day we saw Honorable Raila Odinga swoop in and get the best parts of the protest, and young people did not get the best fruits of our protest. Also, let's have safety first. Take care of yourself. Let people know where you are. And as a movement of feminism, we thrive on unity in terms of sexual reproductive health rights. Let's continue empowering young people about bodily autonomy, that we can have. We as young women have the right to make decisions about our bodies, to freely have safe sexual activities, and understand contraception, understand what it means to even engage in that space, and to destigmatize conversation about sexual reproductive health. I know it's a taboo topic in Africa, so let's, as young people, let's destigmatize these conversations. And above all, on digital safety, how is your online presence like? Are you taking care of yourself? Like Shillah said, what is your privacy protection? Do you report accounts that are always trolling you? Are you reporting to relevant authorities, or are you reporting them on platforms like Meta and X? And above all, let's continue the solidarity and community that we have. We have seen collective action is really powerful. Let's continue being together with like-minded organizations and people, and above all, let us stand on resilience in the face of any setback that you are going to meet, because at the end of the day, change is gradual, but we have really, really immense potential to change Africa, to change leadership in Africa. Thank you.
Shillah, over to you. Any words of advice to young advocates, to young budding advocates?
So for me, is in building our resilience, we need to be very strategic. So for every action we take, let us also put strategies as well, because our actions are usually targeted towards either an institution or I'll say an institution, or pegged upon a certain matter. So let's have our strategies laid down, and also let us use the mistake as learning points for us so that we can do better in our next steps. But above all is just to reaffirm the collective of young people that your voice matters, matters, and will continue mattering, even as we're going to hard times where we continue advocating for speaking out for any injustices, and also speaking into ensuring that our futures are not only secure but also sustainable, a sustainable future. So let us keep going. Do not give up. And I know we think that our efforts are not bearing fruit, but if we take stock really well, we have really borne fruit. And for example, you can see the Kina Morara at the moment and the work that they are doing. So let us keep on pushing, and you can see that the young people's voices, it's kind of a revolution in the whole worldwide, not just Kenya as well, but also other parts of the globe. Yeah, so those are my parting shots.
Thank you so much, Shillah and Wanjiku. Definite, very lovely conversation on youth political engagement. Definitely took some nuggets from there. I'm actually feeling re-energized. But I mentioned earlier I was feeling very tired, exhausted from everything that has been happening. And I hope the advice that you've given young advocates really, really gets to them. And we have to recognize that it's a journey. Like, we are on a journey to reclaim our country. We're in a journey to end corruption. We're in a journey to have health services that work for people on the ground. We need to fight for this country, and we will do it one step at a time. Youth are the future. I think there's a study that said that is it like 3 out of 5 people are youth? I don't know. I'm not so clear on the statistics. Martha, is it 3 out of 5?
Well, I'm not so sure on that, but I know that the African continent now is largely young people. And so what young people are doing in Kenya might just be what young people get to do in Zambia as well. So yeah.
Yeah. In Kenya particularly, the median age is 19 years. So yeah.
19. Wow.
Yeah,
That's
the
younger
median
than
age.
me by like 5 years.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah, so we are the
Your
future.
agents are starting to show.
We really need to fight for our continent. Thank you so much, Wanjiku and Shillah. It was fantastic to have you on the podcast today. I look forward to having more conversations with you, even as the young Kenyan political scene, still remains to be vibrant, even after the protest. To our listeners, thank you so much for listening to this episode. I do hope you've caught up on our previous episodes where we had like very, very interesting conversations with Reverend Adera on religion and SRHR, and with Jethro on intersectionality. And also catch us on our next episode that's going to be on meaningful youth engagement. Please share, like, comment to boost engagement and support this podcast on various podcast platforms like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Please help us to make sure that this podcast reaches more people. Thank you so much. That's it from me today. Goodbye and have a fantastic week ahead.